Before I evacuated, I felt it was going to be pretty bad because the storm didn't turn until Friday afternoon. We left Sunday night early, so by the time it hit Switch Pass, and it was looking big. Saturday and Sunday, when it was reaching up to 175 max sustained winds, and it was coming straight for us, I really didn't expect to see a whole lot left when we came back.
We evacuated on a Thursday, and as we moved into Friday, the forecast kept shifting the storm further and further north and then east towards us. And then Friday evening, before we lost power, for me, it looked like it couldn't be any worse.
The day before Katrina, my father died, so we had to rally, my brothers and I had to rally and get back into the footprint of Katrina to bury our father, because he was at the funeral home in the cooler, and so we had to put him in the ground. So I hurried up and I went back to bury my father, and I went back to our evacuation spot, which was Jackson, Mississippi.
I grew up in this area, and we heard the stories of Hurricane Audrey back in 1957 and how horrible it was. And I even repeated some of those stories myself, but I had no idea the amount of destruction that a hurricane can bring.
We figured that 85% of the boats, of the commercial boats, were disabled. Now, that spectrum of disability goes from anywhere from being slightly damaged to completely demolished. We have no idea what percentage of the 85% of disabled vessels will come back.
It was like we were going through a war zone. There was no sign of anything green anymore. Everything was gray and brown and just salt burn and wind burned.
You know, recovering the offices, making sure the staff had a place to stay. We had to get travel trailers. A lot of our staff in Orleans Parish got their homes flooded, so we had to get travel trailers for them and put them at the offices so they can live. Reopen the Plaquemine office, the Citrus Station.
Try to secure your own home place and a place for your family initially. That's the most important thing, because you really can't function until you do that. And then we began going back to the command center, which was over at Cameron Prairie National Wildlife Refuge. I made several trips there, and you start running into all kind of people, and here there's reports of huge rack lines or debris lines just south of Intercoastal Waterway.
Everyone was running on such adrenaline back then, and it's just now that we're coming down from this adrenaline rush. But you were dealing with so many uncertainties. You were almost numb, and probably you could even stick a knife in your arm and you wouldn't even feel it. But the air of uncertainty, the air of tragedy, the air of desperation was rampant, and because of that, everyone was running with their nerves, you know, really exposed. I mean, at the drop of a hat, anybody would start crying.
So I guess everybody was just kind of numb, and you're in this survival mode for months and months, and you're so busy that that first 6 months just flew by, and it's all sort of a blur to me now.
Before, we were addressing 1 or 2 problems a day, you know, just picking and choosing, almost like apples on the tree. You know, I'll solve this problem today. This time, it just covered you. It was a tsunami of problems that everyone had. All the stories were real, one worse than another.
The chance to put me in charge of coordinating the program activity down here to make sure that the stuff that we're doing fits the needs of the people. So what we started doing immediately is having a series of seminars on how to mold remediate your house with Dr. Reichel. Living in a trailer. We developed a whole series of seminars to help people live in RVs because they've never lived in them before, and they have 50,000 people now stuck in these little boxes. I started getting requests for volunteers to come in, so I became a volunteer coordinator with Penn State University, Ohio State University. Marvelous kids come in, 50, 30, 60 at a time, and we actually brought them out to this shed right here to help Teresa clean up the inside of her shed. And these kids drove straight in from Ohio and were covered with some of the stinkiest mud you ever meet in your life. It had a bunch of fish and shrimp in there. But it really helped her because it got her family to rally around. It's got a lot of the stuff that they just couldn't physically do and emotionally do.
Everyone who was in Lower Cameron and one of our constituents was homeless and scattered everywhere. So we couldn't call them, we couldn't send them mail. We really had a hard time in even contacting people. So I got with the Coast Guard at one point, and they were in the middle of a salvage operation for any vessels that were in navigable waters. So we found some old mailing lists and started mailing things out, and there was a central post office set up in the Lake Charles area where folks from displaced areas could come to. So at that point, that was the first large-scale contact we had with coastal fishermen, and at that point they started coming back, calling me and finding us at our office in Lake Charles.
We're going to start a program this summer that's going to have 30 kids from Ohio State come in per week for the entire summertime and do the same fisheries and agriculture and natural resource recovery.
In the case of the fishing sector, the commercial fishing sector, many of them have lost their homes, their boats, in some cases family members. I've talked with one guy just face to face, and he was talking about he never did find his wife. You know, she's out at sea somewhere. Well, the remains of her are out at sea. One
of the first constituents I met with and talked to that I remember the best, I guess, is a shrimper from Cameron named Ronald Gaspard. And he had lost his home in Cameron, his small business that he had next to there where he peddled his own products, sold shrimp from. He lost that as well. He took his shrimp boat up to north of Lake Charles in the Calcasieu River where he thought he would be in safe harbor. And during the hurricane, a larger ship anchored near there moved around and crushed his vessel. So at that point, he lost his boat and his way of making a living as well. So he was really in bad shape. And then just a few weeks ago, his younger brother was in a car accident and died. So he's really had a lot to deal with. And I really feel for these people and don't know where they're going to end up, but they're going to survive.
Across the board, all of your fishermen were concerned about their boats. You know, they wanted to get their boats because this was their source of income. Everyone knew that, you know, the hurricane had passed, but it still had a lot of fishery product that was still out there, perfectly safe. We had to deal with the perception that the seafood was unsafe. We had to quiet that down first. I mean, that was done very effectively through a number of different agencies.
A lot of folks who were in the fishing industry and had lost their form of employment found jobs in other places. They were on cleanup crews, working with debris removal, and just there were some other opportunities for them, and they took advantage of those. The folks that did stay in the fishing industry, there was a real boom as far as seafood production with this storm surge. It carried everything that was in those nearshore waters as far as 20 and 25 miles inland. All those estuarine species that were in that water came in and they survived, and they're still out there because we have not had a lot of rainfall since the storm to flush those salinities out. So a lot of those shrimp and crabs that came in are still here, and we've got a bumper crop. The problem is our infrastructure is so badly damaged, we're having trouble in taking advantage of that.
Recreational fishermen, charter boat fishermen, they're very important to the economy down here. And then the people that are served by the seafood industry, which is the people of Louisiana. So, you know, if we could get some launches back open, get some boat sheds addressed.
And getting the travel lift from Valdez, Alaska was critical to getting these finished boats or these repaired boats back in the water, making them available to the fishermen to where they could safely work on their boats. We figure that no more than about 45% of the vessels that were previously shrimping are going to participate in this coming shrimping season.
The rate of recovery is quite slow, and a lot of folks want to point the finger at government or government agencies, but the vastness of the destruction is just so big. It's I don't think anybody, including FEMA and some of these other large agencies, expected this amount of destruction.
The rate of recovery is tragically slow, and in some cases tragically insensitive.
The last couple of weeks, I think I've probably been less optimistic than I've been for a while, because the pace of things that aren't happening, and as you can see just looking around, there's just so many different aspects to get one port back up, one fisheries dock, much less a parish, recover the boats, the houses. So I mean, it's just, I'm probably more pessimistic now than I was a month or two ago.
There seems to be a general disconnect between the recovery agencies and the fishing sector. That's one of the things that I'm working on right now, now that we're far enough into the Katrina recovery program, and we're trying to get the connection back to the recovery agency to the fishery sector.
The hardest part is looking at all these home sites, and as you're going down the highway, you see these driveways that went in with just a stand of trees around what was an old yard. And you know those folks personally, and you know the families, and it's all gone. Not just the physical structures or the home sites, but the community as a whole, and that entire way of life is gone probably for a long, long time, and it happened in just overnight almost.
I hate to say it, and it's probably, it's not a bright spot, but it's the fact that people are finally aware of the effects of coastal land loss on the levee system, on the city. We have people talking about restoring the coast that's never even dreamed about mentioning the word. There's a big push now to recover some federal royalties to help pay for these, because it's multi-billions of dollars we need. We need to build land now. And one thing is disappointing that even in the new efforts that people have kind of lost focus on the real need to get out there and to move sediments into the areas to start shoring them up.
As bad as all this disaster is and destruction that goes along with it, there's opportunity there to rebuild better, more sustainable, and there's a lot of opportunity that comes in the aftermath of a hurricane, as bad as it all seemed.
I think the biggest point of optimism that I have for this is that when the next rodeo comes through town, because this isn't our last rodeo, and it's not a matter of if we'll have another hurricane, it's a matter of when we'll have another hurricane. We've got some absolutely fabulous experiences on how to deal with this. I mean, we can sit down and we can say, this we need to do better, this we don't need to do at all, this we hadn't even touched on, and it needs to be done.